Technical expertise gets you in the room. Emotional intelligence keeps you there.
In this episode, Eric Nakamura, seasoned CFO and executive advisor, joins us to explore how finance leaders can become strategic, people-first communicators.
From tailoring your message to your audience to building trust across functions, Eric shares how today's CFOs can move beyond the numbers and influence where it matters most. If you're looking to lead with clarity, deliver hard truths with empathy, and strengthen your impact across the business, this one's for you.
Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Growth Minded CFO. I am Lauren Pearl, and I am here with my wonderful co-host, Alex Suisi.
Thank you so much, Lauren. We're excited to be today with Eric Nakamura from the Growth Minded CFO. Eric, welcome to the show. And if you can just introduce yourself, that would be maybe a great start of this episode today. I am really excited to have you on the show today.
Norman, thanks for having me. It's great to be on here with you guys. Excited about discussing our topic. CFO of Journal Technologies, been doing this for about 25 years. Started my career 25 years ago in Silicon Valley as an auditor during the dot-com explosion and then subsequent implosion, if you remember those times. So I saw the value of a good business at that time. If you remember, people would have a website, dogs.com. Well, here's $50 million. Do you have any revenue? No, but they have a bunch of beanbags and ping pong tables, if you remember that correctly, right? So understood that and kind of evolved from accounting and took a company public in 2004 called Zip Realty, which is the Redfin before Redfin existed. Worked at a large public company, the Cooper Companies, grew that from 375 million to 2.1 billion in 11 years. Then opened my own CFO consulting business with a good colleague of mine. Worked at startups from seed series all the way through Series D, took companies public through SPACs, and been at public companies, and now currently the CFO of Journal Technologies, a public company as well. So mostly in the tech space, but I do enjoy talking about the office of the CFO and the new CFO, who we should be as we grow into the future, and being a trusted business partner. So really excited about your podcast and the concepts you guys go over.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you on. I think what strikes me about looking at your career history, Eric, is you just have such an extensive career of so many different types of companies. You've worked in tech, as you say. You've also worked in kind of like the real estate sector. You've just really been all over the map. And I'm curious, as you moved through your career, was there any kind of through line where you were thinking about what you were going to do next, or any kind of general principles or philosophy that drove which companies you picked?
That's a great question. I didn't focus as much on vertical or industry, but I did kind of create these three pillars of what I look for in companies. And I think it's helped define what excites me about going somewhere. And these three pillars are fairly simple. And I think I encourage all folks to find out what their three pillars or four pillars or two, or whatever it is that you're looking for in the DNA of a company. And the first pillar for me is work with people you trust, like, and respect. It sounds very table stakes and very standard, but you realize, Alex, you guys both,
we're over here shaking our heads. We all know.
Work with a lot of folks, and you don't get that a lot of the times. And you end up finding out you have to have, as a finance person, my messages may not be the most popular, right? But they have to be transparent and factual. And I'd be able to have that rapport, the relationship with the CEO, the board, the COO, the CMO, whoever, the CTO, to have some challenging conversations sometimes. But if we have confidence and we have rapport and we have a relationship, you can have those conversations, go have a beer and be okay, or go have a meal and be okay. If you have people that are not confident, that are insecure, you may feel like you're attacking them. And that collaboration, that conversation, what's best for the company doesn't always be put at the front of the company. So working with people trust, like, and respect, having that respect and rapport is key. Second pillar is, what is the TAM, and can I help execute into that? What is the problem we're solving? And do I care about that? Am I passionate about it? And can I, as a CFO, help execute that better, right? With better people, better processes, and better systems. Can I get better KPIs? Can I be a business partner, understand the business, and really move that forward? And not just be a what numbers guy, but a CF grow, not a CF no. I think I've said to you, is something that is key. Like a lot of times, the old CFOs have been CF no's, very binary, very compliant. We don't have budget for that. We can't do this. We can't do that. I always like to say, what can we do, and how do we problem solve and be a business partner? And having trust, like, and respect, understanding the business is key. And even the last pillar for me is it kind of ties us all together. What is the culture of the company, right? I think McKinsey put a report out that said good cultures perform and execute highly because they communicate, they collaborate, and it kind of makes sense. But we've all worked in environments where the culture is not great and it doesn't work well. And I think it's important for me when I go meet with executive teams, I have dinner with them before I go work at the company. I want to see how they interact with each other. Are the executive team, are they yes men and yes women, just kowtowing to the CEO, kissing their butt? It could be okay, but that's generally not. You got to have some tough conversations. And also, how do they treat servers and bartenders? Do they
Ooh,
treat them
that's
with
great.
respect? Because everybody should serve tables. Everybody should be in that environment because that is high EQ. That is service. And you are trying to earn a tip out of somebody that and please them with things that are out of your control, how the food comes out, how these different things. And if they treat those people with respect, they're going to treat people within the organization with respect. If they treat them like they're below them and they're here to serve me and please me, you can expect that within the organization, the culture is not going to be what you would want it to be. So I tend to find those things are important to me because the other things work themselves out as I get in there. But I'm allowed to be who I want to be as a CFO in those companies because I have those three pillars, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love the idea of the three pillars. Agree that everyone should kind of have them. And you gave us a bonus of the dinner test, which sounds brilliant. What a great way to kind of observe how your future coworkers operate in the world and treat people.
I think we went straight into the growth-minded topics,
Yes.
and you've touched upon so many points that we wanted to talk about. So just as a recap, maybe the being in a trusted environment,
Yep.
the CFO that is a yes person rather than a no person,
Yep.
and finally the culture of the company. There are your three important pillars in terms of, who do we want to work with, and what is the kind of company you're going to go next. Just quickly in terms of tips for the audience, because I think you're right into what the audience wants. How do you assess those items? So you talked about a little bit about the culture at the dinner and the restaurant, but for other items, for example, the trust and being in an environment where the CFO is a business partner rather than a no person, how do you assess those items when you're just interviewing or just making some analysis about the company and where you're gonna go next?
Another great question. I think as I go and interview with these companies, right, I want to be live. I want to read body language. I want to be in the room with the CEO or whoever's interviewing, the board member, so I could see how they're interacting. Are they on their computer? Are they paying attention? Are their arms folded? Are their legs crossed? Are they facing the other way? Those engagement cues, physical cues, are very important to me. Anyways, I was a server in my dad owned Japanese restaurants growing up, so I
Oh,
I
cool.
understand physical and verbal cues. I think, which is very, very important. Also, asking them the right questions. Asking them a question like, "What do you want your legacy to be here?" Which is not a normal question you ask somebody during an interview process. And I think it puts a CEO or somebody like, "Whoa, what are they asking?" It makes them really think about what impression do they want to leave on the company? What kind of leader are they? How do they go execute? And it makes them think about who they are and who they want to be. And their answer could be very indicative of what kind of leader or person they are. And so I
Yeah.
read that coming back. And then the other pieces are, what questions are they asking me? Are they interested in who I am, what I'm about? How do I move forward? What are my three pillars if they want to know? Also, the other things I say is we work to live, we don't live to work. Right. And that those lines get blurred, right? In America, and I'm Asian, right? So I'm part Japanese, right? So it's a very culture where you just go and grind, right? It is important, but if you understand people for who they are and what drives them, I have four sons, and I've coached high school baseball and basketball, so that is very important to me. When I die, I do not want my tombstone to say CFO or executive. I want it to say good father, good husband, good brother, good son, right? Those are things that are important. And if people understand that's who I am, what drives me, you can manage people for being people, not for workers, and who they are, what they want in their lives, right? At the end of the day. And when people ask you, what do you do for your living? I am a CFO, but that doesn't define who I am. I'm a father, I'm a brother, and I'm a husband. These are important things to me. So I think as I get into these interviews, I begin asking these questions like, what do you like to do in your personal time? What kind of these things? I want to understand who they are as a
Yeah.
person, not just as a CEO. That's important, but it'll tell you about their EQ, how they lead, and those things. So these are not typical questions that you would probably get during it. I'll ask the typical questions, right? What can you work on? What do we need to improve? What are the challenges? What's the definition of success? Blah blah blah. All that, like that stuff is important. But I think these ones that you have to think about, how can I extract information that I want to find out about the company, the culture, and the people? Find out what those questions are. And I think that legacy one is one that's really, really good, that catches people off guard, but it makes them think. It definitely makes them think about, and if it comes out to, and sometimes people give you BS answers, right? And you're
Oh,
kind of like, maybe not the company I want to be at, right?
fake hobbies.
Yeah, yeah. You're like,
That's amazing.
well, I want to make more money, and I want it like, oh, okay, that's fantastic. I do too. That's not my legacy, but yes. And so, did you understand the assignment? Did you understand the question? So that it begins to infer, like, are they listening? Are they really listening to what you're saying and
Yeah.
where you're going? And if they are good leaders, they will.
Yeah.
I love that you are interviewing as much as you are being interviewed as well.
Yes.
It's a general theme that I always give as an advice when people ask me what you do for interviews, and said, stop trying to get the right answers or stuff. Also ask the right questions. And I think it's important, and especially for CFOs when they are growth minded and want to actually be part of like the kind of like the business trajectory and the overall trajectory of the organization. So I really like that tip as well.
Yeah, I definitely like it as well. You mentioned EQ, so I'd love to take this moment to kind of transition a little bit from how to approach a company when you're interviewing and deciding whether to take on the CFO role, which is just an amazing place to start. As you take on the CFO role, starting to think about creating EQ in your organization or fostering the preference for having EQ in your organization. First question I really want to ask is, as someone passionate about this topic, how do you define EQ? How do you think about it?
No, you guys just answered great questions at the end of the day. I think and you're just lobbing me grapefruits that I could just knock out of the park. It's just right up my alley. It's like you prepared for this or something.
Maybe.
We're nerds. We do our homework.
It's to your title of your podcast, growth mindset. And as I look at putting the right people in my organization, and not only just finance, but around the organization, is when you're interviewing people, you can have people with high EQ and high IQ. If you have both, we got a winner right there at chicken dinner. Let's take them all day, because they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to improve processes. They don't want to be the process. They want to manage a process. They want to improve, right? They're moving forwards or moving backwards, but we're not standing still. I mentioned this before. We can't be Sally's, and it's not a female or male. It's same as last year. If we're doing the same thing we did last year, we're not improving, getting better. So a growth mindset, if you have high IQ, you know how to do it already. Great. If you have a low EQ and a high IQ, we've worked with those people, and I'll equate it to a great salesperson. A salesperson makes a lot of money for the company, can close any deal, can sell water to a fish, but they leave a wake of destruction in their past because they don't treat people well. It's all about them, me. Companies will put up with that for a while, but not for long term. And people don't leave products or services, they leave the people they work with. They're not feeling appreciated. They don't like this person. This person's not a good person, and the company's not doing anything about it. So that's where I think you got to train the EQ to be high. If you have high EQ and low IQ, we can train the IQ up. It's hard to train the EQ. If you have the right mindset to grow and learn, your appetite for curiosity and growth is there. You can train that. So I'm always interviewing for people with different perspectives, different backgrounds, creates innovation, wants to manage a process, not be a process, wants to automate, and wants to elevate and not be tactical, but be strategic and see the forest for the trees. But you can de-elevate, get in the weeds, understand all the critical failure points of a process, so that way you can manage it better. And so again, I always look at it as putting the right people with high EQ, that create the right processes and then put the right technology and systems around it to wrap it to create efficiency and scalability. I think those things together is something that I definitely look for in people I hire, because I think EQ is such a underrated, undervalued characteristic rather than IQ, that it's, if you want to build a company, build it with high EQ people. The IQ will come. If you build it with a lot of IQ people and no EQ, most likely your company's going to fail, my guess would be, because people are very stuck in the way they are. This is what I want to do. This is what I've done. This is what I know. I'm an expert at this. Like, it's called evolution. Things change.
Yeah.
And that's what you can count on. Things get better. And you have to be open to changing and getting better always, because we're not always going to be the smartest or the best. And so we're always learning as human beings.
Yeah. It reveals in your answer, I think, how multifaceted EQ is. I heard a couple different aspects all at once. I heard, this growth mindset. I heard this kind of external awareness rather than just kind of internal obsession or focus. Like collaborative nature. And then when you mentioned even like managing the process, not being the process, as sort of like a future thinking or holistic thinking, really so many aspects, which it makes it a little hard to pin down. And maybe that's also part of why we don't always focus on it or think about measuring it, because it's a little challenging to articulate exactly what it is, but so important.
So important. And I think one thing that I found really interesting, and it's been a common theme on the podcast and on the guests that we had, and they've all been great talking about this, is the evolution of the CFO in that regard. Because when we talk about I think that's in the description of the podcast, we said CFOs are no longer number crunchers, like living in their kind of like little back office function. And I think they've come to a point where they are now business partners, but they also need to tell the story in front of the organization, in front of the team. They want to be convincing. Can you share your tips on how to help CFOs becoming those people that are the one telling the story, that are convincing? And I think the point that you made earlier is also really interesting, is that it's not always about good news, right? Sometimes you also have to, you not only have to tell stories when, hey, we hit the numbers and the plan is that. It's also about, sometimes it's not about only saying no's, but it's also delivering bad news sometimes, or we need to improve. But it's about framing it into the story. Can you talk about EQ in that context?
Definitely. I think one of the things I've lived by that I learned a long time ago, probably maybe being at my dad's restaurant or being a server, is people always say, treat people how you want to be treated. And I was like, that's not true. You want to treat people how they want to be treated, because I'm very direct. Be very direct with me. Tell me if I suck, tell me why I suck, and we can get better. Let's have that conversation. I'm confident, but I'm humble. I'm humble enough to know I don't know everything, but I'm confident for somebody to tell me that. And I find the best leaders are confident and humble, right? They're humble enough to know their blind spots and hire people to fill them, because they cannot be the CFO. They can't be the CMO. They have to hire the right people, right? So as I talk about that, I'm understanding who the CMO is, who the COO is, who the CEO is, and what's their communication style, what's effective. How should I speak with them? Some are passive aggressive. So being very direct doesn't work, right? And so you can't attack them, right? They'll feel attacked. So you have to find ways to plant seeds to make it seem like it's their idea. And you may tell them again and again and again. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, hey, we should go do this, Eric. I think that's a great idea. In the back of your mind, you're saying, yeah, I did tell you that 6 months ago. But no pride of authorship. I don't care. As long as we do what's right for the company. And I think you have to speak their language. You have to communicate them into the way they want to be communicated. And it has to be succinct. As finance people, we're generally oversharers, right? Here's all the information, here's the data, here's the what, blah, here's all the stuff. This is why we're doing bad, this is why we're doing it. And it's like, okay, give me the executive summary. So as me as a CFO, I tell my teams, I'm like, let's go over it. What story are we trying to tell? And I change it from story, I say fact pattern, because stories seem fictitious. So I say, what's the fact pattern we're trying to tell? What's the data that supports that, to show leading indicators of what's going well, what's not going well, what can we invest in, what are we looking at, what story are we trying to tell here, and what is the data that supports it? And I think having high EQ is reading the room, understanding how to communicate to others, understanding the way they should be communicated to, so they can digest the information appropriately. Because if you speak as like a finance person, some CMOs, some COOs, some CEOs are not going to get it, but they're just going to be, they're not going to listen to you. So you have to understand how to engage them appropriately. And I think that has been one of my characteristics that I've been very lucky to take advantage of.
I love that in your explanation of sort of communicating with people in the way they want to be communicated with. The story you reference is also about communicating with a finance team how to do storytelling in a way that is palatable to them. So clearly this is something that runs really strong in you to cater that communication.
Still to come on this episode.
The coaching and mentorship approach is so important to my teams and what I do. And I'll go back to my kids. And my kids are older now. So I have one out of college, two in college, and one in high school. So it's been a long time. And I've coached them from when they were little ones, from 4 years old, all the way through when they were 18 in either basketball or baseball. And I've used that approach to my teams because I think it's so important for life skills that we learn.
Hypergrowth era is over. This is the age of profitable, sustainable growth. Remember a few years back when securing investments seemed so easy? Today, not so much. Interest rates are up, valuations are down. Money is scarce, and it doesn't come cheap. You need to stand on your own 2 feet. A grow-at-all-costs mindset simply isn't viable in the current market. Today's top priority for businesses is to optimize the customer experience to maximize lifetime value and retention. Marketing, sales, and success have seen decades of investment in the art of optimizing the customer experience. It's time for finance to catch up, to push for the same level of sophistication as the other disciplines, to ensure the finance touchpoints become positive elements of the customer experience. It's time for financial relationship management. This is your CRM for customer engagement through the finance process. Finance have long been under pressure to collect invoices, but not able to focus on the customers those invoices represent. With FRM by Upflow, you can bring the B2C customer experience to your B2B finance process. We've taken a completely new, customer-centric approach that'll set your business free. In fact, we are so confident that we underwrite the value of FRM difference through our unique money-back guarantee. If Upflow doesn't deliver at least double its cost in savings, you get all your money back, no questions asked. Faster payments, better customer relationships, and fully realized growth potential. It's time your finance function embraced the change. Enjoying today's episode? Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and tell a friend about the show. Now back to the episode.
And we're back with Eric on this episode that is really interesting about the role of EQ in your role as a CFO. And thanks so much, Eric, for sharing your experience with this and how you interview people and how you behave as a CFO. Maybe one thing that I think is interesting for the audience is, can you talk a little bit about how in your day-to-day you practice your communication with the rest of the organization as a, not only with the finance team, but more generally with people that are maybe less like experienced at talking about finance concepts, and how do you make sure that the voice of the CFO is heard within the organization at a strategic level?
Another great question. CFOs or finance folks, as you know, historically have been, we call it the cops and janitors. We clean up stuff and we police stuff, right? And I don't use the word stuff. I use another word, but I won't use that on this podcast. We clean up stuff. We
all know.
It's part of our jobs. We have to do it. And that's part of, and people kind of get to know us for that's who they are. But getting out, there's, books about managing by walking around. Maybe in the virtual world, we can't do that, but we have donut meetings on our Slacks. I set up meetings with other people across the organization just so they can get to know us that, hey, look, we are the cops and janitors. We have to do that, but we're also human beings. We're people that have families and have kids and bleed red just like you. We do the same things you do. We put our pants one leg at a time. Sometimes I'm sitting down 2 legs, but that's fine. I think it's getting to put a face to the name, and really getting them to understand, like, the finance team is here. Finance, we don't have external customers. All our customers are internal generally, right? Most of the time. And so we're here as a support function, finance, legal, IT, facilities, all HR support functions. So we make sure that we are reaching out to our customers and creating value, just like you would do for your customers you're selling your product to, your service to. You create value. You want to create value in relationships with them. Don't be transactional. Create relationships that are long lasting. So that way people can know, trust, like, and respect. Create the right culture. And people say to me, like, you're really unique, Eric, in that you're a CFO that talks about culture. And I think it's so important because having the wrong culture can be very costly.
Oh, yeah.
Turnover can be very high from a cost perspective. Time, money, it's the resource triangle, right? Time, people, and money. We do not have infinite amount of that. So building the right culture, having the right people on the ship, talking to them, letting them know that you're approachable, that you are a person and you are a business person with a finance background, not a finance crazy CFO that is here to just to turn you down. I think you're heard and you're listened to. And I think as an executive, you have to listen to the people, right? And then they feel and let them know their value no matter what. And we may disagree to what it is, but you have to let them know their value because you do not have a company if you don't have great people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true.
And
Just
I
the,
and I so sorry, Lauren. I just really like this idea of the the CFO embodying the culture of the company as well, because it's always been seen as like, oh, of course, if that's the people person, or maybe like the CEO, she's great at like embodying the culture. But I think it's so important that if you want to be good at crunching numbers and being good on budgets, you also embody the culture, and you can only do this by living with others. And as a CEO myself, I would be very worried if my CFO was not that person that I can rely on, just like pushing the message of the culture of the company and how it behaves and stuff. So I think it's a great feedback and tip for the rest of the.
I think it's a wonderful tip that basically the way to have the voice of the CFO heard is be approachable.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's such a subtle nuance that is so important and so powerful, and such a great tip to think about as the CFO trying to gain that influence. I wonder, Eric, because you are so passionate about this area, often the things we're most passionate about, we have kind of an origin story about it, of what kind of moment you started to realize that this factor mattered so much. So, Eric, are there experiences you had or moments you had in your career where you started to think, wow, EQ, this is actually what matters the most?
Another great question. One thing I'll say real quick is it's funny because I've told people from CFO does not stand for Chief Financial Officer. It stands for Chief Feelings Officer sometimes. Sometimes it stands for Chief Fun Officer, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so I think it's those
There you
things are
go.
people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we spend most of our time at work. We have to make sure we're creating the right culture and enjoy it.
Yep.
Life is short. We have to enjoy it, right? We spend a lot of time away from our families doing this. Let's create an environment where we enjoy it and we're good at what we do and we feel success at the end of the day, which is important. To answer your question about what was the turning, I look back over 25 years and, most folks, similar to myself, impatient when you're young, want to
Sure.
get ahead. I want to be here. I want to do that. And I think around maybe 10 years ago or so, when I started my own CFO consulting business with a colleague of mine, he actually was the former CFO of the Golden State Warriors. They were my client. I used to audit them. They were my client back in 25 years ago. And he asked me to be a business development and a resource to be a partner to the CFO consulting business. And I realized all the things I learned over the previous 15 years, very finance focused, very being in the business, all these different things. And when I had to go out and basically hunt business, I had to change my mindset and my perspective, right? A little bit. As a finance person, not very comfortable to become a salesperson or business development. I'm maybe a little bit different because my dad was an entrepreneur. I've had some businesses. And I'm probably a little more loquacious than most CFOs, than most. And so he saw that in me and wanted me to be business development. But that gave me the confidence to go out there and read people, go sell our product, our services. Who's the best? What's the best product you're selling? I'm selling myself as a resource, right? So how am I going to articulate that to a potential client efficiently and effectively of why they should hire me and what's the value prop of Eric Nakamura? And that is where I learned my confidence and the EQ and body language and verbal cues and sitting and getting people to be engaged. People will buy services or products from you if they like and respect you. If they do not like and respect you, they are not going to buy it because they do not trust you.
Yep.
And so you have to gain that relationship and respect very quickly in a sales pitch. And there's ways you have to find out about the people that you're talking to. Who are they? What triggers them? What are they excited about? And that is where I learned, I think, gave me the confidence to do so. Because I'd say before that, I was impatient and probably not as confident. I was still very humble. but that forced me to do that, because if you didn't, I wouldn't have been successful at selling our services and understanding how to sell them. And that really, and I also had a coach at the time to kind of give me some advice. And it was like, Eric, you should do this. You'd be good at this. And you're like, nah, I'm a finance. I'm not, I can't. And they're like, you should go sit up in the front of the room and go pitch to these folks. And I started doing it, and I was like, oh, it's working. I'm kind of halfway decent about this. And so it began that confidence process and learning and growing more about that and realizing what I always knew that I just never focused on. And it really was game changing.
That is so great to hear about, you know, the CFOs that actually can take a step back, learn from learn from the outside. I think it's something that is really, really important. And you mentioned a coach. I think I know very few CFOs out there that actually have a coach. And I think it's so important. And we've heard that so many times on the pod, people telling us, I've learned a lot from communities, people outside, people that force me to have a different point of view on my job and my day-to-day job. I think it's a great tip especially when we're kind of like drawn into the kind of day-to-day and sometimes forgetting about, you know, hey, let's stop the bus for a second and think a little bit outside. Speaking of being a little bit outside, I want to maybe end this episode, Eric, on talking about something that is a little different, but might bring a different perspective to you, is the fact that you're coaching, I think, your kids playing basketball. And I think it's really interesting that you're talking about this. You know, this could be something that people see as something very personal, and you don't want to talk about this. And you talked earlier about, no, this is the same person. This is the same Eric. So I'm kind of curious how this is. I was about to talk about the past, but it's not the past. How is this influencing today your role as a CFO, and what do you learn and what do you apply from this kind of like external like thing that you're doing, but it's probably super important for you?
Coaching and mentoring is something that it fills my cup, to be honest. I enjoy doing it, right? And then I get a ton out of it, and so I part of the CFO Leadership Council, different groups, and people ask for mentors, and I always raise my hand, like, I'm happy to do it. And I mentor probably right now 4 or 5 different people. Early stage CFOs want to be a CFO, whatever, or just need some advice, right? I like doing it because I want to pay it forward and give it back, right? I've been doing this for 25 years. I just turned 50 last month, which is pretty crazy. And I figure I don't have much. I have time in my career, but I want to enjoy the rest of it, right, in the day. And the coaching and mentorship approach is so important to my teams and what I do. And I'll go back to my kids. And my kids are older now. So I have 1 out of college, 2 in college, and 1 in high school. So it's been a long time. And I've coached them from when they were little ones, from 4 years old, all the way through when they were 18, in either basketball or baseball. And I've used that approach to my teams because I think it's so important for life skills that we learn. And I'll give you a good anecdotal story from my kids. We're Asian, obviously. And in basketball, my kids are not going to be the first ones picked. We don't meet the eye test, right? They haven't had to struggle with cars or clothes or money. I've given them a good life, right? But on the basketball court or the baseball field, they do have to struggle, because no one says, I want the 5'11" Asian kid. No one says, I want the shorter Asian kid over there, because we don't meet the eye test. And that's just a fact. And that's okay. But you have to be good at everything you do if you're going to compete out there. Mental toughness, leadership, communication, adversity, structure, teamwork, all those things that make you a good human being and a good basketball player, or what, that they have to do that to be noticed, because they don't have the physical attributes that someone's 6'6" and dunking. They're 6 feet tall. Maybe they're dunk, but they don't have that look. So they have to be seen. And I tell them that you have to approach that way, because no one's going to give you anything in your life. You have to go earn it. And this mentality of I'm owed this, go earn it, and that stuff will come. And I think coaching folks to do that and having confidence to go out there and to go earn it and to go make mistakes. Like, I coached my kids. We went in practice. I want you to go so hard. I want you to make a mistake. So when the game comes, everything slows down. Same thing in the work environment. If we're not making mistakes, we're not trying to improve.
Yeah.
If you want to be safe and be a Sally, do the same as last year, great. But we have to break some eggs before we make this cake, because we have to improve. We're moving forwards, we're moving backwards. But if we're not looking to improve, we're not pushing hard enough to get better. And I want us to get better. And if you're perfect at what you're doing, we should put you in a different role to challenge you more so you can learn and grow if you have high EQ and a growth mindset at the end of the day. And so that's the approach I've been using to my teams and coaching people and giving them confidence. I think coaching, the career coach I had, the biggest thing that she was able to give me was confidence. Confidence that I can go do that. That it's just not finance. You're just not a finance person, Eric. You're more than that. And you can go add value in many different ways. And it allowed me to step out into an uncomfortable area where I didn't do that in my first 15 years of my career. But the past 10 years, I enjoy it so much that I don't want to ever stop doing it. So I think that's where I want to enhance that confidence for people in finance to go out there and be impactful to organizations, right? There's someone I know, he's a great person that I've worked with and kind of mentored a little bit. We talked about ROI, return on investment. He also says, Eric, no, it's return on impact. And I was like, that's a great saying. So it is about investment, but it's about the impact you have that creates value. And it's not always to the financial statements or the bottom line. It could be a culture. It could be a loss leader. It could get us more sales. There's many different ways to have impact. And I think coaching and mentoring is something that I really enjoy doing to help with that. And it's kind of sprouted from my kids out into my organizations and people I mentor.
I love that parallel between coaching and being a manager in general in the organization. That's great for the audience, Eric. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really wonderful to see kind of the balance that you find between work and life and being able to take those lessons from each sphere and bring it in. That feels like another kind of important thread for EQ is being able to see those lessons learned in each of those places and have a full, rich life that you can continue to bring to work and bring all of that value. So thank you so much, Eric, for this wonderful, wonderful conversation.
They're inspiring.
Such an inspiring conversation and really another great episode of The Growth Minded CFO. To our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, you can like us on your platform of choice. You can subscribe to see more episodes. And if you know of another wonderful CFO like Eric, who you'd like to see on the show, please let us know. We are always looking for new wonderful guests. And until next time, that's us on The Growth Minded CFO.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you, Lauren. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Growth Minded CFO podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and consider telling a friend or colleague about the show. We'd really appreciate your help in spreading the word. The Growth Minded CFO is brought to you by Upflow. Upflow is a groundbreaking financial relationship management software. Think of it like a CRM for finance. Upflow enables businesses like yours to collect cash faster, build stronger customer relationships, and achieve efficient long-term growth. Join thousands of forward-thinking finance leaders and go from chasing invoices to engaging customers. Find out more at upflow.io.